everyone, and welcome to our first official Authors at the Roundtable chat. This is something that grew out of the LAM Summer Reading Challenge, and is something that I hope will be something to do throughout the year. So, Rachael Ritchey has very graciously agreed to be my guinea pig. And the first one for us to do this. So I am so thankful for you being here tonight. And I cannot wait to chat more with you. I've got some questions, and hopefully we'll have some other people join us. And if so, we'll have more questions, but we're just going to have fun.
Sounds great to me. I'm excited. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'm glad to be here.
So why don't you start out? Well, I'm going to tell people how we met. And then I want you to tell everybody just a little bit about yourself and your books. So Rachael and I got to know each other because she hosted this incredible competition. It was a short story competition to have stories in an anthology. And it was the sci-fi and fantasy adventure short story. Or I think I got some words mixed up in there. But anyway.
That was pretty much it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. There we go. Yay. So the crux. So she hosted this. And so through that is how I met Rachael. And I just thought she was the coolest person, and I wanted to get to know her better. And yes. And yes, my story did make it in there, which was pretty cool.
Yes, it did.
All right. Okay. So, and that was back in 2018, by the way, just for everybody to know. So back in, it was either, crazy. Was it? Yeah, it was the spring of 2018 when you put everything out there.
It was. Yeah, it's been a while.
I know. That's crazy. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself and about your amazing books.
All right. Well, my name is Rachael Ritchey. Well, it's my author name. And I have been writing and publishing books since 2014, 2015. I've been writing since sixth grade. So long time, because I'm kind of old. Not that old, but I'm kind of old. It's been a long time.
Shush, we're not old.
We don't even know the numbers. So I started writing and publishing in around 2014, 2015. And I started doing it completely in secret, you could say. I didn't tell my family. I told no one what I was doing. It just was something that I needed to do. In a lot of ways, it was therapeutic, and it was this thing that I had wanted to do for so many years, but just had never had the courage to just do it, to just try it and just see where it went. And God really opened up doors for me in my mind and in just my time in order to do that in such a way that I was able to write a book from beginning to end. And I went from writing a short story to writing 98,000 words of a full story with characters that like grew and changed and really reflected who I was and how I needed to grow and in my own life. So that first book was really drawn out of that. And then from there, I didn't know that I would write more books, but as soon as I had written that book and was through that book, more stories kept coming, and I just had to keep writing and keep writing. And I started a blog where I started sharing short stories online and meeting other people who wrote stories. And then we started competing and writing stories together and voting on the ones that we liked best. And Blog Battle came out of that. And I hosted that for a lot of years. I've kind of handed it over to a writer friend now who's taken over it, and he does an excellent job. And then from there, I knew I also needed cover design, and I needed interior formatting, and I needed editing, and I couldn't afford to pay for all of it. So out of that, for my writing, I took skills that I had already enjoyed doing, things that I like doing with photo manipulation and digital art and things like that. And I started developing those skills so that I could design my own book covers. And then I taught myself interior book formatting, which was terribly frustrating at first, 17 hours or whatever, just trying to format one simple basic book. And I don't think everyone has that much trouble, but I know I did. But out of all of that, I learned these skills, and then I started offering to do them for other people. And then I turned that into a small business. So word of mouth got around. And so now I have pretty consistent clients that come back and want more. And I love that. And I love connecting and making friends with these people and sharing our love for books and reading and design. So yeah, that's kind of like the gist of everything.
That's so great. And so you have, just so everybody knows, you've got a trilogy of books. You have the anthology, and you also have a picture book
Yes,
based on your first book that you mentioned a moment ago. Um,
yes.
and they
Oh,
are
oh,
all
that's a cool story.
wonderful and
Yeah.
lovely. Yes.
So that one, I'll just real quick, I'll plug that one. It's a little bit different than the fiction book, and I love you, comment there. The artwork is by a friend that I went to high school with, who's a professional artist. So she does illustrations for people's books. But she read The Beauty Thief, and then we met for coffee one day, um, and she said, I as soon as I read your book, I could just picture the story. She said I had to draw it. So she pulled out this beautiful picture that she had drawn. And I don't have the original, but here's some of her art that she came up with for the story. Just like the different parts that really stuck with her. This is the beginning of the story where Ismene is telling Kate the story of how she first met her betrothed that she didn't know was her betrothed. Um, and then she just continued and made all of this beautiful artwork for it. And I said, well, that's awesome, because I was thinking I wanted to write it as a picture book, but I didn't know what I was going to do for illustrations. And she just captured it so well, so much of the feeling of it. Anyway, so that's how this book came about, was because I was thinking about it, but she just had this yearning and desire to paint these pictures, and she's a watercolor artist. So these are all her watercolors in here that she did by hand. She's since moved on. Now she also does digital art, and her digital art looks like beautiful watercolors, like vibrant, beautiful. It's gorgeous, and I love her work. So her name is Jessica Hackett. And if you need contact information for her, reach out to me and I'll see if I can get you set up.
I will
Okay.
be getting that from you.
All right. Yeah, I just love it. But anyway, so yeah, so
Excellent.
I love that. And then the other books, there's 3 of them, but there will eventually be more.
Yay. Okay. So what was you talked a little bit earlier about how that first book came to be out of a place in your own life.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit more about the idea spark for your books. And did you always know, and I think you answered this a minute ago, but you didn't know that this was going to be a series at the beginning, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. It was such a scary thing for me at the beginning to just actually say I'm going to write this book and I'm going to see where it goes. Um, that I just never like thought that I would do more. But once you start and you get into something and you do something creative, it's hard to stop doing that creative thing, especially when it becomes like a passion, I guess. So with the Beauty Thief, we were foster parents at the time, and there was a lot of ups and downs with foster care. Uh, it was really hard because we didn't know if we were going to get to keep her or if our little girl was going to go. And we just wanted what was best for her, but it was really heartbreaking for me because I was so attached, and it was really hard. And so when there was all the unknowns, I started shutting down emotionally. I didn't want to connect with anybody, and I started backing away from my family, and I was really worrying everybody around me. And I guess that they were having like conversations about having an intervention for Rachel, because I didn't know like it was that bad, like I had pulled away that much. But I think I knew at the same time, because I was sitting in the car on the way to church one morning, and I was crying out to God. I was praying and saying, Lord, I don't know. I feel so ugly. I feel so awful on the inside, and it's leaking into everything. And I need help. Help me. What do I do? And I'm sitting here in the car, and it's about a 45-minute drive to church, and the kids are all quiet in the back seat, and my husband's driving, and the radio's playing quietly. And then this story just started coming into my head. It's like God was saying, "You're a daughter of the King, and um, and I will take care of you, and I won't let you become this dark thing. And you're not going to be ugly and uncaring. And so God was telling me through this story that it started forming in my head that whatever ugliness was inside of me, he was going to fix, and he was going to make me whole again. And so that's kind of where the story came from. I thought about it for a week, and I kept thinking, and then it was about this princess who all of her beauty had been stolen. Inner beauty, outer beauty, she was just ugly. And there's nothing that she could do to fix herself. It was the ones who loved her who did it. And so the story's not really allegorical, but it is a representation of the love of God and the love of the people around me who helped restore beauty to my heart, love, and connection. So, and that's kind of what happens throughout The Beauty Thief. And it turned into a short story that became a really long story.
It is a beautiful story, and that's a beautiful story too of how it came to be. I think that that's so amazing how sometimes these stories start as that still small voice, and it's just amazing. God is really incredible in the way that he works through his people, his creative people, to create new things. It's just amazing.
Exactly. Thank you.
Oh, yay. Okay. So you've told us about the picture book. So do you think that you might do a picture book version of any of your other books? Has that ever crossed your mind?
Probably not. This was the only one that I ever had that real desire for.
Yeah.
So I have it at this point in time. That doesn't mean I won't later on. I keep thinking that I want to make more picture books. Like, actually, my daughter has this idea for this alligator, like that does like silly things and gets in silly situations and stuff. I thought, oh, we should turn that into children's books with illustrations and stuff. So eventually I'll get her convinced of that. So I mostly have like ideas for other people to write books that are children's books.
That's so
Maybe
great.
not my own at this point. Oh, did I ever tell you that I also, for The Beauty Thief, that I also turned it into a screenplay?
Yes, you did tell me that. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I don't think about it very much anymore, but yeah, I turned it into a screenplay, and I had it, I entered it into a contest to get reader feedback on it and stuff. And it was really encouraging because they're like, it would be a really good movie. We like the concept, except for it's too big of a concept, because unless you're like a well-known, J.R.R. Tolkien, they're not going to spend that much money on what it would take to bring this book to the screen. If it was like in one location and there wasn't a big cast, maybe. But so, I mean, that was really encouraging feedback at the time. I don't know if it's true, but.
Well, and too, like, I don't know when that was that you submitted, but I wonder if maybe the landscape is a little different now.
It might be. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Like epic TV shows are a big thing.
That's true. And now, like with Netflix and with all the other things that are producing, I mean, I could be wrong because I haven't really dug into this, but it does seem like they're looking for more content and they're more open to direct from writers. So
I know.
could be
Maybe
a good
someday
time.
it's written. We'll just have to see.
Yes. Oh my goodness. You heard it here first, guys. Oh, that is so great. So, I had a thought. I had a question, and then it left me.
Oh,
Well,
sorry.
I'll just go to no. I'll go to my next question, and then maybe it'll come back to me. So you are now working on the next book in the series, and it has been a few years since you wrote in this world.
Yeah.
So what have been the challenges with that? And also, I'm wondering, have you discovered that maybe you needed a little bit of that separation, that time separation? Do you think that what you're working on now, like how it's coming out, is a better version than it would have been had you started earlier?
Boy, I hope so. I've had a lot of anxiety getting back into the process of writing. I stopped for a long time, mostly because just life in general was really busy, and I had taken over basically homeschooling our youngest, and then all the creative work that I was doing for other authors with their book design and stuff, it just ate up all my creative energy between that and life in general. So I really have not written very much other than short stories and stuff for the last several years. And then when we moved, I don't know if you've ever done something where you've had a big change in your life and like certain things are just really hard to pick up again and do consistently because you're still kind of like learning your life, right? It's like new, everything's new about it. So anytime there's a big life change, I think stuff like that happens. A new baby, you move somewhere, a new job, like whatever it happens to be, those things can really disrupt creative flow, I think. So moving from Washington to Florida, I think has really also given me a little bit of a hiccup. And I'm finally back in this place where I feel like I can do that. And I've said no to things recently too when it comes to some other creative work. So some new clients I've had to tell people no because I just don't have the time and the energy to put into anything else. But when it comes to writing in the Chronicles of the 12 Realms in the world, I had to go back and I had to reread the stories in order to remember like character names and certain situations because there's so many little things that happen in a series that kind of build up over the course of time that eventually you're like, I totally forgot that happened in my own story. So it was a good thing that I did that because I'm probably going to have to do it again actually, because there's so many things that have built upon like other stuff that if I start writing now and I don't remember those, it will change the trajectory of the story. And backing away and rereading it, I am seeing my stories in a new way, which is kind of cool. It's kind of refreshing. Falling in love with characters again, finding that I like characters better that I didn't used to like as much. And it's always fun when you come across a quote in your own book that you forgot you wrote.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, that's pretty good.
Like, I wrote that.
Yeah, I wrote that. That was me. Like, where did that come from? Not my head. It's been good, I think, in a lot of ways to have that time though. So I hope it's making me a better writer. I've done a lot of reading in that time, especially in the fantasy genre, which I've always read in the fantasy genre, but not as much as in the last few years. I've always liked historical fiction, and like anything with a mystery or suspense, stuff like that. So this is a little bit different than anything that I would normally read because the story just made sense to be a fantasy story. It was fairy tale like when I wrote it, like originally, and it's kind of morphed into more like standard fantasy sense. But anyway, yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think it's interesting that you said that you like to read historical or something with mystery or suspense because that definitely comes through in your stories. Like, even though they're fantasy and there's a lot of adventure in them, I can definitely get the feel of a historical
Oh
with
yeah.
like you toss in some mystery and suspense through there. So it
Yeah,
makes
just a little.
sense. That's so neat. And, another thing too is I think when we step away from something and we come back to it, and I'm curious if this is your experience as well, like you've changed over those past few years because, like you said, so many things have happened. I mean, cross country move, hello,
Yeah.
in addition to all the other things. But you, in some ways, are a different person. So I don't know. Have you noticed that perhaps that is influencing how you write now versus perhaps how you might have written a few years ago?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And the book that I'm focusing on the most right now is actually a prequel to The Beauty Thief. And then next up will be the fourth book in the series, which that's kind of ruminating in my head. And it's going to follow a character that I think everyone will be happy to follow. Anyway, but the prequel, I'm definitely writing, I essentially started it again. It's got the same guts, the same essence to it, and it's the same general story, but it's a totally different plot line. And I feel like because I'm looking at it from a more mature, different understanding of life in general, and seeing, my kids going through things that they're close to the age of some of these characters, it's given me a different perspective on like how they would think and feel and act. Um, and so, yes, so I definitely agree with that it does make a difference in how you approach story, having that time and that change in who I am and how I see the people around me, the world around me.
Yeah. It's, we write fiction, but I do think that there are elements of real life in varying ways in what we
Yes.
write.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that I like write down what my kids say and like how they say it, because that would make any sense in the world that I've created. It's not quite that kind of a story, but just like to understand how teenagers think and how young adults in their 20s think, and um like hearing other people around them, that helps me better ground my characters and make them more realistic. So,
That's so great. I love it. Our kids are definitely inspiration in some form or fashion.
yes, they are. In real life, it's good to have. I think it's good to have that real life element to it, because it makes the fiction more relatable.
Real. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with that. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here to talk more about your cover design, formatting, art, all of those things.
Yay.
So you've told us kind of how you got into cover design and formatting. It was really out of necessity. Like
Yeah.
you needed that. And
Hmm.
so what was the process for you to learn that? Like what were some of like, how did you even go about it? Was it looking for tutorials, or was it asking people, or was it just trial and error? How did it all come about?
Well, that's an interesting question. I had trying to think what the program was, because I've always liked doing photo manipulation from the time that I found out it was a thing in like the late 90s, early 2000s. Um, and that's not dating me, is it? It
Not at
probably
all.
is. I'm not that old, I swear. Anyway, um, so anyway, I found out that was a thing, and I was already into like learning how to use the internet and create websites and stuff like that. So if I could teach myself how to do something, I probably would. Um, so I think it was Paint Shop Pro at the time.
Yeah.
And I played with photographs all the time. In fact, for a while, I thought about becoming a wedding photographer, and I did that. I did that for a couple weddings, and then I, did special things with people's photographs and stuff. Um, but I didn't really end up pursuing that. That was fine. So I just kept doing it for fun, and I've always been a sketch artist. I mostly like to sketch. I'll also do some watercolor and some acrylic. I do enjoy acrylic quite a bit. In fact, you can't see them from here. I've got a couple of my paintings in the living room over there. But I already had like these sorts of creative skills that I enjoyed doing, and I thought, well, I can't afford editing, cover design, and formatting. I said I can pick one. So I was like, the one that I have the most trouble with is editing. I need an editor. Just do. So I was like, okay, I'll pay for that, and then I'll figure out these other ones, and it'll be awesome. Yeah. So I went through I don't know how many like cover designs trying to like come up with something that looked professional and not like someone who is using Paint Shop Pro to stick stuff together and yay, it's there. And it took a while, and I still like the first cover. It was I wish I had a copy of it out here. I don't right now. Um,
Is it?
it
It's
was
not this one. Was this the
it
first
is.
one?
That's the one. Yep,
Is it?
that's
So
it.
I love this, but anyway.
Oh, sorry. No, that's the second one.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Well, I love this one.
I love that one. Yeah, every once in a while I go and I was like, I should have just left it as that one. I really love it. But I do. It was the same tree but backed off, like, so you could see more of the tree with the moon in the background, and then it was blue and aqua, and then the title was on the bottom in more of a blocky font. Really similar, but just a little bit less fancy than that one. I think that one's fancy, but um, yeah, so I put that out. I did that work, and I was pretty happy with it. I mean, it turned out pretty good. And then I was designing the second cover for the second book, and then of course that's where this one had to get changed so they could have a similar look to them, because I had, grown in my skills by that point, and I knew more about fonts and like where to find different ones that I could use for cover design. And so I just taught myself little by little and watching some YouTube tutorials. Eventually I did switch to Adobe Photoshop, but my program was old. My computer was kind of clunky, and Photoshop switched to a subscription model, and it was
Yes.
just too expensive. It was too expensive. So I was like, I can't do that. I've got to find something else. So I ended up trying GIMP for a little while, and GIMP is okay. It's an open source program, totally free. It's as complicated to use as Adobe Photoshop, although I'm sure Photoshop has gotten a little easier with time. But anyway, but I didn't really love GIMP either. So I was like, I'll try Affinity, because I'd heard of it from various places. And Affinity is a program by a company called Serif. And Serif was the maker of another photo manipulation program that I had used, and I can't remember which one it is that they used to have. But Affinity was basically the replacement for it. And Affinity was also with another program called Designer and another program called Publisher. And it's their suite of programs that's competition for Adobe Photoshop. But they didn't have a subscription model. You could buy the program outright. And because they're growing the program and fixing it and making it better, they would send you updates to the program to take care of any bugs and to try out new features and stuff. And you didn't have to pay like for those things. You didn't have to pay again and again for the upgrades and things. So
That's
that
awesome.
that was really great. Of course, there are bugs. There are things that would happen where they would have to go back in and fix things, because like the program would maybe like you'd be doing too many things at once and it would shut down. And it doesn't have an auto save feature, so you might be lucky. It might recover, but it might not.
Oh,
So
yikes.
I mean, there's stuff like that would happen. So I have dealt with that in the middle of designing something, and I try to remind myself regularly, save your file. It's very important. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, with Affinity, once I got into that, I really solidified in that program, because the suite of programs works just like using Adobe. It's there's some stuff that's not as good of quality maybe, but they're improving it all the time. And so I think eventually it will be a straight up competition that Adobe's really going to have to think about. And I love the fact that it still is not a subscription model. They promised not to become a subscription model at some point in time, but I think Canva just bought them. So we'll see.
Yikes.
Or bought the Affinities program. So Affinity and Designer and Publisher. And they each do something differently. And I've been teaching myself how to use those. There's tons of tutorials on YouTube, free tutorials. Affinity puts out their own tutorials. So anybody could really learn how to use these programs. And I use them for most of the design stuff and some interior formatting. Yeah.
That's so cool. So I may really have to look into that, because the subscription with Photoshop really is ridiculous.
It adds up real fast.
It does. It does. All right. So I've also gotten to watch you grow as a digital artist over the past few years. And that completely fascinates me, because it's something that I have no talent there, not at all. So I'm just watching and being amazed. That's basically me, just sitting here, not really knowing exactly what I'm looking at, but I'm amazed by it. So I want to know a few things about that. What led you to want to bring your art to the screen? So you enjoy doing acrylic and watercolor and sketching and all of these things, but what led you to want to do this? And how did you learn? Like, what were some of the steps that you took to learn? And do you prefer this now to some of the old school methods? And what's been the biggest challenge in all of this?
So I think it's been a long time thing, because I've always paint 3D, I think is like the one that comes with your Microsoft PC or whatever. So programs like that, I used to always just like draw and stuff in those. So I've always really liked digital art, but learning how to use Affinity, Affinity Photo, and Affinity Designer has really opened up like art in a different way, because when you draw with your pencil or your paints and stuff, if you make a mistake, you kind of have to go with it. Although I do find that Bob Ross is right; those are happy mistakes, like
Happy little accidents. Yeah.
happy little accidents. Yes, exactly. Because a lot of times, you can turn it into something that maybe wasn't even like on your mind that could be in that photo or that picture that you've created. But there's always a lot of anxiety with like, I can't fix it. If like something, if I mess it up, it's messed up and I'll have to start again. Digital art, if you learn how to do layers and you use your Control Z or whatever the button's called, Command Z on your Apple. If you learn how to use undo, then you can undo mistakes and go back and fix things. If you've done a whole bunch of art and you really don't like it, and there was a point where you were happy with it, you can go all the way back to that point and start just from that point instead of from the beginning. I mean, so there's some really great things about digital art that makes it less anxiety filled when you're not the most fantastic artist in the world. I love both mediums, or all the mediums, like pencil. I love paint. I love crayons,
Yeah.
and I can do a lot of the same things with digital art too. So it just all works out really well.
That's so cool. And so what do you remember the catalyst of like why you even started in art to begin with? I mean, maybe as a child, or do you remember the point where you kind of started?
Yeah, actually, I was around 10 or 11, and I was bored, and there was this is going to sound a little bit self-centered. There was this black and white picture of me, with my big old glasses on, because I had these gigantic glasses, like they were huge. And I was yeah, I was like leaning on my hand like this with my big glasses in this black and white photo. And I drew, here and there or whatever, but then I was like, I wonder if I can make that into a drawing. So I would sit on my bed for hours, and I think I worked on that picture for like months, just like a little bit here and there. And it turned, I wish I knew where I put it. I have it somewhere still.
So
But it
cool.
turned out actually really good over the course of time. And, years later, I went back and I did little extra things here and there. But I started with a self portrait off of
That's
a black and white photograph, and then it went from there. So I love realistic drawings. I'm not as good at like between cartoon and realistic, like that area in between, and that's where I really want to improve, because I think that's like the most marketable um, digital art for book design and stuff is in that area. So not totally cartoony and not totally realistic, but somewhere in the middle. So that's my next goal, is to really learn how to do that better.
So cool. I love how you set yourself goals and you have things that you want to learn and improve upon and you go for it. And that's inspiring.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I
Well,
appreciate that.
we are getting close to being out of time. So I would love for you to tell everybody where they can find you and what are some of the best ways to interact with you, and just get to know more about your books and what you have going on.
All right.
And
Well, the best
design
way.
too for any of our authors out there who are listening. So
Sure. Yeah. So for getting in touch with me, probably the most central location is my website. It's just rachelritchey.com, and it is spelled weird. Both Rachel and Ritchey are probably spelled weird. It's Rachael, like Michael, AEL, not EAL and not EL, just AEL. And then Ritchey is RITCHEY.com. So rachelritchey.com. Or you can find me on Instagram. I probably, of all my social media, I spend the most time on Instagram. It kind of connects to my Facebook. Any of those places, you are totally welcome to email me, DM me. And then for design work, I have a separate website. It's RR, so Rachael Ritchey, rrbookdesign.com. So that one's fairly easy.
That's great. And I will put both of those links for sure in our little description here on YouTube.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited. Definitely reach out to me and connect. And if you have questions about how to do your own design work or interior formatting, I love to coach and help. So I'm definitely available for that as well. It's just something I like to do.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I remember from our early days of getting to know one another was I reached out to you with questions about indie publishing and also about the formatting. You saved my bacon. And that's why you are my cover designer and formatter forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you. I love it. And I love doing it.
So that's awesome. And also, Rachael has a fantastic blog that is now on Substack. So I know a lot of people are enjoying following a number of folks on Substack. So you can get that on Wednesdays. And it's always full of encouragement and lovely thoughts and great books and wonderful things. So
I enjoy it. I have not done my newsletter for a long time, and I've gotten back into it, and I've been really enjoying it on Substack because it's so simple. And again, there it's rachaelritchey.substack.com. So same thing.
That's easy to remember.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, thank you so much for thank you for being here. This has been so much fun, and I look forward to doing more of these in the upcoming year. So
yeah, I can't wait to meet all of your other authors that get to come in and get interviewed. This is going to be great.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Rachael.
Thanks.